Hello friends, now we are going to discuss another video that is related with conservation of historical heritage. In this video, we will discuss some aspects related to the conservation of culture. After listening, you will be able to know the main areas where efforts for conservation need to be made and know how the conservation can be affected. In the previous video, we already discussed some general aspects of conservation and preservation of culture and heritage. In order to maintain the continuity, we will start our discussion from conservation of historical heritage, archaeological sites and monuments. As we know, India's historical heritage includes not only the general and religious monuments dedicated to the various faiths, but also archaeological sites, rock cut caves, palaces, havelis, homes and the living heritage developed over the centuries. The cultural heritage in terms of historical relics and standing monuments could be broadly divided into the following groups. Like first group is prehistoric remains, second one is prehistoric and early historic sites, third one is religious edifices, fourth one is your megalithic remains, fifth one is rock cut caves, sixth one is temples of different faiths, seventh one is mosque and tombs, eighth is related with palaces, havelis, houses and gardens, ninth can be as a miscellaneous buildings. The above classification is by no means perfect. We have divided them into these categories only for the convenience of the present study. Most of these monuments are of visitors' interest only, while some of these are part of living culture and are used by people as places of worship. In the category of living culture may be included some temples like masjid, temples of South India, some Shaktipeeth and many more. Need for a separate conservation treatment in respect of these has been brilliantly pointed out A. G. Krishna Menon in some research articles. As we know, France was the first country to enact a law in the year 1809 for the protection of cultural property. India enacted Indian Treasure Trove Act in 1878, Greece enacted a law in 1887 for excavated property and Egypt for regulation of excavations in 1897. Although we have discussed these things, but these are very important aspects. So, I am repeating once again, so that you should know that these are the important points to be understood, to memorize whenever we are going to appear in any interview or in examination. Again, in the year 1904, Ancient Monuments Preservation Act was passed in India for preservation of monuments, excavations, protection and control of antiquities. The Indian legislature also passed the Antiquities Act in 1947, under which no antiquity could be exported outside the country without the permission of the Government of India. There is a very specific agency in India, that is Archaeological Survey of India, that is also called ASI, which was established in the year 1861, that was established by the Britishers. Besides other functions, it was made responsible for the conservation and preservation of monuments, archaeological sites and remains and other important antiquarian and artistic vestiges. The concept to declare historical monument as of national importance was introduced by Government of India in the year 1951. The Archaeological Survey of India is also the implementing agency of two central legislations. These central legislations are Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act, that was promulgated in 1958, and the second one in the year 1972, that is the Antiquities and Art Treasurers Act. As we know that presently the total number of centrally protected monuments and sites are nearly 3,700 in India. Archaeology being a concurrent subject, other states of India also enacted similar legislations based on the Central Act and Protected Monuments and Antiquities, which have been in existence for not less than 100 years. But in case of paintings and manuscript, it is not 100 years, it is 75 years for declaring them as an antiquity under the Act. Now, let us see World Heritage List, World Heritage Monument that is declared by UNESCO. The General Conference of UNESCO adopted a resolution in the year 1972, creating thereby a convention concerning the protection of world cultural and natural heritage. The main objective of this forum was to define the world heritage, enlist sites and monuments from the members countries, the protection of which is the concern of mankind. The convention defined world heritage and drew a list of world heritage which included more than 1121 cultural properties and sites. In India, it has identified nearly 30 cultural sites and 7 natural sites and 1 mixed site. Recently, 2 more sites as Ramappa Temple and Dholavira has been designated as World Heritage Sites. So, in India total number becomes 40. These sites are star attractions for international and domestic tourists. There is a great need to protect, preserve and conserve these cultural properties and sites for the posterity and allow conducted and regulated visitors to these sites, so that excessive influx of visitors, tourists should not endanger the survival of these relics of our glorious past. In 1979, Tourism and Heritage Conference organized by Pacific Asia Travel Association, that is PATA, reflected the concern and desire of tourism industry for cooperation in this field. Main problems in conservation of monuments, like there is a lack of awareness amongst general public about the importance of saving the monuments and preserving them. Second thing is, there is a lack of sufficient infrastructure and manpower. We are lacking in that. Third factor is apathy of local civic authorities. They are not very much willing to conserve and protect the whatever resources we have in terms of heritage and culture. Fourth one is damage and defacement by visitors and tourists. Fifth one is there is a lack of coordination between government and non-governmental agencies. In case of India, main problem is availability of expertise. There are very few agencies available with proper technical expertise to undertake the work of restoration, repair, conservation, preservation, maintenance, development and management in comprehensive management way. There are certain leading agencies, for example, ASI is there, that is Archaeological Survey of India. In every state there is separate State Department of Archaeology and museums. They are supposed to do management type of work related to heritage and culture and monuments. Third one is National Research Laboratory for Conservation situated at Lucknow, that is NRLC. There is Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, that is called INTEC. There is Hindustan Charitable Trust of Birla. There is International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Properties, that is ICROM, situated at Rome, Italy. There is National Trust of England and National Museum, Delhi. So, these are the agencies who are doing some work related for in the field of conservation and preservation of monuments. The monument sites of cultural and heritage importance have to be protected from excessive burden of visitors and consequential defacement of the monuments. The number of visitors should be worked out keeping in view the condition of monuments and sites, and their visits should be properly regulated and conducted. Visitors and tourists should be educated by the managers of these cultural properties and the guides so that they behave responsibly once allowed entry inside the monuments. The way very large number of visitors, tourists are conducted and regulated at internationally non-tourist places like Tower of London and palaces at Versailles, that is in Paris. This is very exemplary, and we could devise our own methods incorporating ideas from these successful models of heritage management. The money collected as entry fee from these monuments should be plugged back for the conservation and preservation activities related to these monuments. There have been cases like the fort in Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, where excessive use of water by the inmates of the fort has caused irreparable damage to this magnificent fort, popularly known as Sonar Killa, built in the year 1158 AD. The threat of environmental pollution to world famous Taj Mahal at Agra is also another example of susceptibility of these monuments to the external polluting and damaging factors like air, noise, water pollution and negative impact of a positive economic activity like tourism. A large number of historical monuments, houses and buildings have not been declared under the list of protected monuments by the Archaeological Survey of India or state government agencies. These are being regularly plundered by people and commercial interest. Their stones, doors, decorative motifs and sculpture are taken out and sold. A case to point is of houses in Rajasthan and Gujarat whose doors and windows have been taken out and are sold as antiques. In the process, hundreds of houses have been pulled down. Here, the efforts of local bodies, voluntary agencies and local population are urgently required to extend the protective hand to save them from immoral traders. Now, let us see conservation and preservation of artistic and cultural heritage. Our artistic and cultural heritage is used as a unique selling point, that is USP, in the international tourism market. India is known as a cultural destination, and tourists coming to our country are very keen to watch our artistic and cultural expressions in the following forms like architectural relics, sculptures and temples, our paintings, our folk music, our fairs and festivals, our rites and rituals, our literature and poetry, our handicrafts, our cuisine and our lifestyle. While visitors are welcome to observe and understand and even participate in our celebrations, but efforts should be made to insulate our heritage from getting affected by visitors' lifestyle or thinking. Most of our fairs and festivals, extremely popular with international tourists, now are gradually being exposed to these external factors like excessive flow of outsiders like tourists. Many of these fairs and festivals are already showing signs of change like the Pushkar fair in Rajasthan. This cattle fair with religious fervor has now almost become a tourist fair, and there are negative impacts because of large number of tourists. Spread of prohibited drugs is one of the major negative features which have been noticed ever since it became so popular with tourists. At the same time, liberal lifestyle of these foreign tourists is adversely affecting the sociological equations and behavior in a small place like Pushkar. Another example of cultural pollution is distorting the authentic Indian styles of paintings, music and dance to tailor made it to suit the taste of the visitor or tourist. The poor artists fall prey to the lure of money and change the style of their presentation to suit the market needs rather than keeping in view the traditional artistic considerations. Handicrafts, under the pressure of market demand, are also undergoing change. Mass production and commoditization have adversely affected the crafts and craftsmen. We will discuss these in some other videos. The authorities should initiate steps to educate the visitors about the fine points of these art forms and allow the tourists to enjoy the art form without tampering with it. There has been an alarming increase in the number of beggars and touts, especially around tourist places. These elements not only conjure up a bad image of our country, but also harass the visitors or tourists for the money, and their pestering at times spoils the mood of the tourist, leading to avoidable unpleasant situations. There is a great need to plug back at least the part of tourism earnings for the preservation and development of our traditional art forms and our cultural heritage. Now, let us see conservation of socio-economic heritage. In a bid to attract large number of tourists to new areas, many states are opening those areas which are sociologically speaking very fragile and susceptible zones like our desert areas, our hill areas, our tribal areas and our coastal areas. One very glaring example of the negative impact of tourism was spread of hippie culture in late 70s in Goa, which was vehemently resented by the locals. Similarly, the spread of drug use in places like Kathmandu, that is in Nepal, Banaras, Uttar Pradesh, Pushkar, Rajasthan and Kullu Manali, Himachal Pradesh is another phenomenon which is causing concern. Ecologically and culturally, sensitive zones like desert of Rajasthan and in places like Jaisalmer, there have been cases of AIDS reported. It is believed that this virus of AIDS reached Jaisalmer because of excessive movement and stay of foreign tourists in the countryside of Jaisalmer while enjoying the popular tourism activity like camel safari. In places like Jaisalmer, where number of tourists visiting annually is more than the locals, then gradually even the behavioral pattern of the new and young generation shows some unwelcome signs of change which are causing concern amongst village elders. Another example is a famous tribal fair at Baneswar, that is Dungarpur, Rajasthan. Attracted by the large congregation of tribals and because of wide publicity and aggressive marketing, hundreds of foreign tourists started visiting the fair. Due to lack of instructions and proper briefing to the tourist by their travel agents, tour operators, hotel operators and other authorities, some of the tourists took photos of young tribal girls while they were bathing in the holy river at Baneswar. This invited criticism by the people, and in the press lot of articles appeared against encroaching upon the sanctity or we can say privacy of this fair. As a result, authorities stopped promoting the Baneswar fair for the tourist. While promoting tourism in such sensitive areas, the authorities must keep in mind certain points like carrying capacity of host ecosystem. Second thing is special nature of fairs and festivals. Third one is sensibilities of locals. Fourth is educating the visitors about the do's and don'ts. Fifth one is discourage longer stays of foreign tourists, especially in close proximity to tribals. Sixth one is Only special interest groups and serious tourists should be allowed to visit these areas and places. Proper regulation has to be ensured. Seventh is, efforts should be made to gainfully associate the locals in tourism activities so that locals derive economic benefit of the activity without being adversely affected by it. Other point is, in a sensitive tribal or desert or coastal area, we should define heritage zones and open areas which are open to visitors so that the influx of visitors does not disturb the normal peace of life of the host society. Keeping the fragile ecology and sensitive local population in mind, a number of steps have been taken to preserve local culture. Certain remote areas have been declared restricted areas. In northeast and other hill regions, this has been done. Special permits are required to visit these areas. There are restrictions in buying the property by outsiders. In Lakshadweep and Andaman islands, also the tourist flow is highly regulated. These steps have certainly helped in preserving the local culture. Now, in the last, my friends, we can say that tourism, like any other economic activity, has positive and negative impacts in a given area or situation. Our efforts should be to monitor the growth of tourism and initiate steps to regulate the activity by enforcing reasonable restrictions or code of conduct for the tourist. Our culture has survived more than 5,000 of years and it has withstood the onslaught of all types. It can certainly endure the marginal impact of movement of international or domestic tourists, provided we all join hands and ensure proper and scientific management of tourism, which is eco and culture friendly, and we evolve a living culture which is tourism friendly. Thank you.